Well, like Brian, you got the platinum in Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
Like, surely at some point you must have thought about this, right? Like, I got to do this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was basically I had everything except the stupid fishing trophy. And the entire time I had MG Noxa like just being like, but fishing's the best. Fishing's the best. And I'm just like, it's like the worst. I'm like sitting here and I'm messing with
he also likes
thing.
Resident Evil 6, so I wouldn't trust. What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 54 of Podcast Reload, a general gaming podcast where we invite SIFTD.net community guests from around the world onto the show to talk about video games and the games industry in all its weird ways. I'm your host, the Seoul, Japan dweller, Evan Piotrowski, and joining us today are two SIFTD community guests, Michael, aka AW08.
Hello.
And SIFTD staff member, Brian, aka Bentley.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for coming on, Brian. It's been about a year, I think, since you've been on the show.
Yeah. I mean, I only get to be on once a year, so I guess this is it.
Yeah, after I think Vin threw you in the doghouse after you recommended he play Final Fantasy 15, and he bought it, and yeah, to each their own. I still want to play that game, by the way. Regardless, I kind of have to.
I feel like I put in plenty of caveats into the episode.
Okay, I'll have to go back and listen to it, although I don't think I want to for a very specific reason, which I'm going to bring up very shortly. But
all right,
Michael, you're a new guest, so thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good. And so, whereabouts are you?
I'm in Manchester at the moment. I'm from Romania, but I live in Manchester, UK.
That's cool. It's been a while since we've had it someone from the UK, or living in the UK rather, on the show. So yeah, thanks for throwing your hat in the. I was going to say throwing your hat in the towel. Thanks for throwing your hat in the towel.
My pleasure.
throwing your towel in the ring, throwing your name in the hat. There you go.
Yeah, I think that does.
Yeah. And
so we're super global today then.
Yeah.
We triangulated. What is the middle point between Kentucky, Manchester, and Kyoto? Someone pull that map up. Triangulate our locations and see what's in the middle. But speaking of Final Fantasy 15,
I'm just kidding. You're gonna put it into
I actually
the vault?
have a.
Oh,
wait, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you're gonna put Final Fantasy 15 into the vault, Evan.
Oh no, there are actually some caveats about the video game vault, but actually more so about the episode that you were on, Brian.
Yes.
I have to apologize for that episode because I was absolutely smashed in that episode. I think I started the podcast 9 beers in, and then by the time I finished, I don't even know what I had, like 15 or 16 beers. So if you go back and listen to the episode where
you had a good time, that's all that's important.
Yeah, Brian did his best to convince Vin and I that we should play Final Fantasy 15. That was the theme of the episode, but I was so drunk on that episode, and listening back to it is actually
what number?
This was Podcast Reload episode 40.
Oh,
it was
40.
called Objection, the big Final Fantasy 15 debate.
Okay.
So, yeah, this was 9 months
Might
ago.
have listened to it, but I need to check it out again.
Yeah, it was a rough one. So, sorry about that. You deserve better, Brian.
Do I?
I don't know. Maybe you can answer that question by the end of the episode. All right.
There you go.
So, sorry about that. Moving on to the Podcast Reload Video Game Vault. We are making a vault fit for the most noteworthy, historically important, prestigious, or simply awesome video games of all time. Take your pick. If you could pick one to put in a giant video game vault to survive an earthly cataclysm in order for future generations to play and learn from, what game would you choose? So I will start off with our new guest, Michael. What game are you putting in the video game vault this week?
Super Mario Odyssey. And
oh my gosh.
Wow.
the reason for that is because I thought this through a lot. I would like that the new generation of people coming after the Cataclysm to discover the first game being. I find that specific game having the most important elements of what the game should be. It is fun. It is you have exploring. It also has certain traits of our world, so they can kind of see from some cultural aspects from our world before the cataclysm, stuff like that. Kind of figure out what our mindset was prior to the cataclysm. But yeah, I wouldn't throw into the vault a competitive game or a violent game. I would just like the next human that discovers the first game from the vault to be Super Mario Odyssey, because it's the embodiment of what games not what games should be, but generally games should be fun and colorful and cute, and yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I agree. Super Mario Odyssey is, I think, the best Mario game. Previously, for me, it was Super Mario World. Period. Yep. I think it's the best one.
Best Mario game. Period.
Yep. Ever. To be fair, okay. I'm a Super Mario World guy. I think that game's better than the 3 games that came before it. I know a lot of people love Super Mario Brothers 3, whatever, but I think Super Mario Odyssey is like you said, Michael. It's fun. It's pure joy. Like I had a smile on my face the entire time I played that, and it's it's more. It's got more going on than a lot of other Mario games. There's more puzzle elements. Most games, it's like go from A to B. And I know, like 64 and stuff, you did have to kind of poke and prod the world to explore it, but not in the same way that you do in Odyssey to find moons. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you have to explore every crevice of that game and just like turn it on its head and look at it from different angles to be able to find all those moons. And it just has a little bit of something for everyone. It has like challenging 2D parts. The final area in that game, the actual very end of that game, is the hardest I didn't beat it. Platforming section of any Mario game ever. Yeah, I think I died like 40 to 50 times before I beat it. But I absolutely love Mario Odyssey. I think it's a great choice.
Once you get past those 40 or 50 deaths, it's totally a great game.
But the funny thing is, I died 50 times to beat it, and then I went back and did it again, and I died like 3. So it's totally possible. You just have to keep cracking at it. I can understand if someone's just like, I'm not. Death 30 is the last one for me, but I had such a great time with it. I just kept cracking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's compared to the other Mario games, it's the other 3D Mario games. It's the best balanced one. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I had this problem with Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, although they were both really, really fun. They felt like it would take forever to beat them.
I beat those games and I moved on. I did not try to get any extra stars or anything like that. I'm actually surprised that so many people after playing Odyssey are just like, oh, the Galaxy games are the best 3D Mario games. I don't know. I entirely and wholly disagree, but to each their own.
I don't know. There's something about the Galaxy games, though. I don't know if it was just the
awful
platform
controls.
that they. No,
well, I mean,
it had its moments in that particular regard, but there was just, I don't know, and I think honestly for Galaxy games, I think it has to do with the time it happened and the console that it was on. I think it was a purely this is what happened at this time sort of blip. And I think that is one of the reasons why it has such a strong place in everyone's heart.
Yeah. Oh no, I like them a lot. I
didn't say you didn't.
They're good. They're really good games. They've got a magical quality to them as well. Like some of those Galaxies are like really, really well done.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of Nintendo's great things, and I think every developer
as a
has
side point, I
sort
don't
of a
want to
niche
go into
thing
another
that they
direction.
can do, and we'll get into it. We'll get into it when we get to Mike's topic with Ubisoft, but there's something about Nintendo and the amount of love that they put into a Mario game that it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, and it's crazy that they can. Yet even in 2017, 30 years after the series, or more than 30 years, 30 plus years after the series comes out, that they can just keep doing it.
Right.
Keep innovated and making a Mario game feel fun and new in different ways. It's amazing. Those guys, those people that make those games is just hats off. Caps off. You get it? All right. Okay. That's a great entry. So Super Mario Odyssey in the video game vault. And Brian, how about yourself? What do you put in the video game vault?
So I really struggled with this one because part of me wants to put in a game that people can learn from, as in don't do this. But I ended up going with a game that I absolutely love and think it's a great example of what a Japanese role-playing game should be or is, and that's Persona 4.
Ah, that's a good one. Love that game.
I mean, I've gone through it twice, put 100 hours into each time, and it's just every time it's just about the relationships that you can build and finding, the collections you can make. There's just so much about that game that is so great. Is it perfect? No, but there is just so much about it that if you were to say, okay, you can only play one Japanese role-playing game, this would be the first game I would be like, this is the one you should play.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to learn from it too. I think it's very unique in the way it balances what you're doing in and out of dungeons in a very interesting way, especially with building relationships with the people around you. And I think one of the best things about that game is how believable the characters are and their interactions together, and how that translates into being a better group of people in the dungeon. So
I think what you're saying, right.
Because when before the show, we were talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or Final Fantasy 8. So many JRPGs about friendship conquers all. We're stronger together as a team than we are separate. But I think this game nails that kind of JRPG trope in a more meaningful and believable way. Because you have to work for those relationships.
Right. And the relationships of the people with each person feel real.
Yeah.
They actually feel like there's a tangible togetherness that they have.
Yeah. So when, the main character is about to get hit, is about to die, and Chie jumps in the way to take the blow. It feels I sat and ate beef bowls with Chie, and we talked about Bruce Lee movies and all this stuff, outside of the the dungeon.
You and your Chie, man.
Oh man, I'm a Chie. Yeah, Chie all the way. What about yourself?
I'm an Amagi.
Okay.
I like Yukiko.
Yeah, Yukiko. I think Vin was on the show. Girl. He said there's some weird way that you can have a relationship with all the girls.
I am unaware of this.
As was I. I don't know if it was a bug or what.
I'm a kind of a one. I'm a one-woman man in Persona, I guess. I don't know how to. Usually, I just sort of pick my person, and then I'm just like, all right, this is my jam.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that, but apparently it's possible. I don't know. It maybe
he went for the harem ending.
Yeah. Although I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way around that in a JRPG. Why wouldn't there be? Of course,
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean that seems logical. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we're about to talk about what we've been playing and then talk about the harem. We'll discuss that when it comes time.
Okay, but wow, you guys brought it today. Super Mario Odyssey and Persona 4 are the newest additions to the video game vault. So we got Skyrim, Metal Gear Solid, Fallout 2, Dark Souls, Eco, A Link to the Past, South Park: The Stick of Truth, The Talos Principle, Ocarina of Time, and our newest entries, Super Mario Odyssey and Persona 4. Great additions. Thanks, guys. Moving on to what we've been playing this week. So I will might as well go in order like we did before. Michael, what have you been playing this week?
I'm sticking with Golf Story on Switch.
Yeah, please. I'm glad you're bringing this up because I'm having trouble finding games to play on my Switch, and this is a game that I've been eyeing for quite a while. So
I am also very interested in this. So please,
I have both fists lightly tucked under my chin right now, with my elbows on the table. So please tell us about Golf Story.
I'm quite a huge fan of the Hot Shots series. I even played the tennis ones, but this is about golf, and I was really looking into another wacky sort of golf game, and this just nails it. I love how they implement this mechanic with which you can just place a ball anywhere you are and just shoot it wherever you want. Like it has these sort of RPG elements, and it's really nice. It's really cute. It's perfect after you come from just beating a more serious game, a AAA game. So that's why I'm sticking with it. At the moment, I'm relaxing with it. It has some nice ideas, and in parts I feel that they could have gone further with how you can actually make use of these mechanics. I have yet to see certain things. I'm sure this game has a lot more things to show me, but you could expect it at a certain point to do more than it tries to. Maybe for the sequel, but pick it up. It's totally worth it. I found myself smiling a lot of times while playing it because it has like these nice things to it. It's really comical in certain ways. It's a great game to play on your Switch.
Okay, go ahead, Evan. No, go ahead, Brian. We might cover the same question.
So I was just going to ask. I was going to ask. So you mentioned the smile on your face, and this is important to me, especially when I'm kind of looking for a game like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, charm. How charming is it?
To be fair, of course, I've had moments when I was more charmed than this game is charming me. But I would give it a 7. I would give it a 7
okay.
to be honest. But yeah, it's just fun to play. You see something on the map and you're like, okay, what if I shoot this ball into that thing? And in some ways, this is what I was talking about. Like you expect some things to happen, but they don't always do, you know? For instance, at first I was expecting that if I shoot this certain ball in a certain hole that was randomly placed in that specific area, I would get something, but no, it's just for you to practice.
Do you always can you just always shoot hit a golf ball no matter where you are? Or do you need to like pick one up? Do you have like an inventory of golf balls or anything like that?
You have an unlimited amount of balls. For instance, you can, if you press X, you can just throw them.
Okay.
So I actually tried this because if you throw a ball and then you throw another one, they can hit each other, so they push each other.
Okay.
So I was I don't know. I think I spent like 5 minutes throwing this ball because you know how in games like when you shoot into a wall, the bullets at some point you notice how some of the marks are disappearing.
Yeah, the textures eventually for the new ones. Yep.
Yeah. I got bored of doing that, and I was like, maybe I eventually crashed the game because the balls and they remain there.
Threw balls for like 15 minutes.
Yeah. The golf balls remain there. So even when I left the world, because you have this overworld and you have all these biomes that you can visit, and of course you visit them in a linear order because the story is quite linear. You cannot explore all the biomes. But yeah, even if you leave that biome, go into another, and then come back, that pile of balls is still there. So it has these really cute technical things going on. It's it's charming in that way, if you may. Yeah, like anywhere you are, you can shoot the golf balls anywhere you'd like.
How's the story? Story? Like, is it more of like you just a game where you play golf and then there's some story elements, or is there like the story is strong enough that you're kind of going from A to B and then in between the story there's golf?
Without spoiling too much, it's about a character that wants to be coached, and the coach doesn't take him seriously.
Okay,
and he tries to
it's like Happy Gilmore,
catch his attention. And so you do all these errands. You have all these characters like these mole rats are infesting my golf field. You shoot them with the ball, and you have like five like, spread around.
Surely there's another way.
Yeah. Or for instance, you have to feed fish in the water. So you actually have these plants that their flower is like sort of in the shape of a bowl, and you need to go to the plant and shoot the fruit of the plant in certain places on the water.
I like how everything in this world is like solved by playing golf. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of in the vein how in Tony Hawk, for instance, everything is built for you to skate on it.
Right.
It's contextualized for skating.
Right.
Yeah, so the mechanics are really, really complex because you have wind. You have, although it's a 2D game, which is surprising. Maybe the Mario Golf games did it too. But again, you have all that range of features like the angle of the field. It's being represented in the corner of the map of the screen. You have the wind power. You can select in which part of the ball you want to hit. So you give it a spin. It has all these things you'd expect from a golf from a golf game.
That's cool.
So it's the full experience.
You know what?
And it's 2D and it works.
That's good to hear. I think it's one of those games where if I get home and it's like I don't want to play, say, Prey, which I just picked up on one of the sales, it might be nice to. That's okay.
I'm just messing with you.
It might be one of those things that's just like, I can't go around a spaceship like smashing telephones just in case they're like transmorphing like black goo. Like I just want to hit some fucking feed some fish with some ball shaped flowers. Yeah,
it's perfect for that. My fiance always takes over the TV, so I'm left out playing on Switch.
That's cool.
And that's great.
All right, awesome.
That's great for that.
I think you sold me on it. I mean, I have so many games to play through, but it's definitely going to go on the list. It seems like a nice side game. All right, cool. And Brian, how about yourself? What have you been playing?
Right. So I've been playing for review Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet. And,
wait a minute. Is this game from Japan? Is this game from Japan?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
With a name like that, it has to be.
Right. Yeah. So this is a game based on the Sword Art Online universe. In the beginning of season 2, Kirito is sent off to go to a new VR MMO called Gun Gale Online, and this whole game is based on that.
Okay.
On that on that game in that
game
universe.
Within a game, huh?
So like I was hinting, the largest harem of people. Of ladies for one person, he is definitely on that list. So it's basically it's like a third-person shooter with a bunch of JRPG elements into it. So it's all about collecting guns and building up guns so that you can go and shoot a bunch of things. So it kind of has a Borderlands feel to it. Also, it's kind of cool. But one of the things that I really loved about it was, considering this like the 5th one that I've played, and like you're going through it, and it's like the first like 12-15 hours, it's like just a nice pace. Like it's not like full of a whole lot of collection stuff, which is always a problem with JRPGs. And it just felt like it was really flowing. And then it was almost like the developers were like, well, you've put in 12 to 15 hours, so you can grind now. We think you've invested enough. We think we can demand that you grind. And you're like, wait, what? And then, so I'm like, okay, so I start putting some extra time in to grind, because that's what you do. And I'm like, all right. So finally I get to they've been talking this whole time to get to this one point. I get to this dungeon. It magically appears like it's supposed to. I get in there. I get about halfway through it, and I get to a door, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can't get through this door. You have to go back to these other dungeons that you couldn't get into before, and you need to get these key cards from them." And you're like, "What? What? What?" So all of a sudden now they're just making the game longer to make the game longer. And that's when they really started to lose me. That was like right then. It was like this huge gut punch, and you're like, "Oh, why?" As you're falling over.
Yeah,
it's just
man, that stuff's like.
So I'm now at the 30s. Like I've put in like a day and a half, so I'm over 35 hours of gameplay. And I can't get through the main quest right now, because the second dungeon that I need to get through to get these key cards, because I'm not leveled enough. And so I have to go and grind some more in order to be good enough to get through this stupid dungeon in order to get a key card to go back to the original dungeon. If I didn't have to play this for a review, I would quit.
That sucks. And sometimes like the whole not knowing the balance of grinding versus like actually progressing in the game. It's like, how do they not know how to do that? Like It's been proven in so many games. Like I know balancing is always an issue, and people patch games and stuff like that. But it's like, don't ever just shut the door on the player and say, nope, grind 7 levels before you can progress. It's like, I don't understand why they do that. It seems like a choice, right? It's not by mistake that they decided that you needed to, like, okay, arbitrarily you need to grind right now, I would imagine.
I mean, it is like, this is how stark. Here's how stark it is. I had to go get these 2 key cards. I go to the one dungeon. I wasn't really strong enough. I went through and grinded an hour or so, went back in. I was able to beat it. I went to the second dungeon. I got smacked down. I literally walked in.
Wow,
died.
That's pretty.
It was like, they were like, yeah. It's very stark realization of, you are not meant to be here until you go out there and go give us another 4 hours of your time. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's really weird when you see games like this that, of course, maybe it's not the type of game, but I'm used to actually leveling up from doing side quests instead of just killing mobs.
I've done the side quests.
Yeah. I've literally stopped playing some JRPGs just because of that. Like, I don't have any drive to go back, just because I know I in front of me I have like maybe 5 or 7 hours of grinding.
Yeah, I have a baby, so I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably. Just... I don't have a baby, and I think I'd be out by the sounds of it.
Games should respect our time,
especially
more.
With arbitrary grinding.
I think so.
BS like that,
Right.
It's one thing I definitely demand from games. Like, okay, not the graphics, not the whatever, but respect my time.
Yeah. Totally get that. Well, Evan, what about you? What have you been playing?
All right, I'll keep it short. I've been playing Hokuto ga Gotoku, which is the new Fist of the North Star game by the Yakuza Studios. Fist of the
Okay, now you've been super stoked for this, right?
Yes, Fist of the North Star is one of the reasons why I probably have ended up in Japan. I think I was like, I was watching cartoons as a kid, and then all of a sudden I saw this anime where this guy stuck his finger in a guy's forehead and the guy's head exploded. And I was like, whoa, cartoons can be violent? I didn't know that. Where did this come from? Japan. Where the hell is Japan? Look at a globe. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll take some books from borrow some books from the library, and start learning about this country. So started with Fist of the North Star basically, and Fist of the North Star is it's a post-apocalyptic game that has to do with Chinese martial arts, and the idea of Fist of the North Star is ripped wholesale from Mad Max, and the people that had created the series, which is originally a manga that turned into a 152 episode anime and a movie, and then it's just become like a pop cultural like powerhouse in Japan. It's like Metallica. Right. If someone doesn't listen to Metallica, you can say, "Do you know Metallica?" They're like, "Well, of course I do." Same thing with Fist of the North Star. Yeah. Everyone in Japan knows Fist of the North Star. It's embedded in the history of Japan's pop culture, and
perfect.
I love it. It's basically you play as Jesus, and you are walk through a post-apocalyptic world, and you are the sole I don't want to say student of Hokuto Shinken, which is his name's Kenshiro. He's the Fist of the North Star. So he wanders the post-apocalyptic wasteland of the earth, killing like basically Mad Max-esque villains that drive on motorcycles and have mohawks and like axes and just like go into towns to steal water and like kill people and just do awful shit. So he kind of just strolls into town and makes quick work of all these nasty guys and saves the town and then moves on to the next town, that type of thing. So yeah, it's basically Yakuza with a Fist of the North Star skin on it. They've actually taken a bit more liberty with the art, which makes sense because it's originally a manga. So there's kind of like a cell shading on the characters. The game looks great. Sure. One thing I will say is it's not in the new Yakuza 6 engine, the Dragon engine that was made specifically for the PS4. This totally feels like Yakuza 0. And I would not be surprised if it's the same engine that they put a new skin on. That's not the worst thing, but it does feel way more arcadey than Yakuza 6. Just how the camera controls, how the character moves and stuff. Like in Yakuza 6, there's no loading times when you walk into buildings or when you start a fight. In Yakuza 0, there are loading times in between fights and going into buildings. Same thing here. But I can't really complain. This is basically my dream game that actually Vin had asked me about a year ago if you could have a new game by a developer, what would you pick? I picked Fist of the North Star by Platinum Games, but actually I think the Yakuza studio is a better choice for this. But it's great. I mean, it's not wholly interesting to most people because no one really knows Fist of the North Star. Just imagine your favorite like cartoon thing ever made by like your favorite studio, and that was made into a game. Like it's great. It's got it feels like the manga. It's a brand new story wedged in between a section of the manga. So what they're doing is saying, okay, so after this happened in the manga, Ken kind of wandered off and did his own thing. And then we're to assume that after that happened, he came back to like the main story.
So you cannot fully enjoy it if you don't know the manga, right? Or do they explain for newcomers? Because
the story is completely new. Now in the game, there's a part you get captured, you're in jail. He's recalling things that's happened in the past, things that have happened in the manga. You don't necessarily need to know any of that stuff. All you need to know is that you're basically Jesus who knows a special Chinese martial art. That
is it the biblical Jesus or
no? But you are basically like the savior of the world. Like you're the most powerful being in the world, and your main goal is to just like walk around the wasteland and save people, and also by punching people in the face and making their heads explode. In the worst.
Now, did you this is canon, right?
I don't know if it is. It's a brand new story with brand new characters. A lot of people from the manga do show up in it, but in the game, they're going. Kenshiro recalls things that have happened in the manga, so I'm led to believe that they're kind of mixed together. But although he meets people for the first time in this game that he met differently in the manga, so that doesn't make any sense. So I think what they've done is like it's basically like it's a side story, and they're taking slight liberties with the characters from the actual Fist of the North Star story. But it's great. It's like everything that happens in a Yakuza game. You wander around a smaller open world kind of like town. You run into bad guys. You make their heads explode. You stick your fingers in their necks and say, "You're already dead." And then they run away screaming, and then they explode into nothing. Blood, everything disappears. You end up saving townspeople, and then there's an overarching story where you're helping to save this town because you're looking for your lost love, Yulia. And yeah, it's great. I'm having a great time with it.
I was led to believe it was another Musou game, but it's interesting you say it's more like Yakuza.
It's exactly like Yakuza. It's exactly like Yakuza. Yeah, you're wandering around these small open world sections, and there's a specific story thread, and there's a lot to do outside of actually fighting. You can even play baseball. Ken picks up a giant metal beam, and guys with mohawks and axes on motorcycles ride towards you, and if you hit them at the right point, you can make them fly into the air, and you get points for how far they fly. It's great. It's similar to Yakuza in the sense that the balance is very weird. It's like melodramatic but also funny, but they do a really good job of like balancing that out to where it doesn't seem like this wouldn't fit in a game that's being serious while on one hand and being a bit silly on the other. So it's got all that stuff in it, and yeah, it's great. I love it, and it's to me that's it right now. It's my golf story. Like this is the type of game that I can like put my feet up on the coffee table and lean back and play, and just have a really good time and turn my brain off. So yeah, love it. So yeah, actually, speaking of open worlds, let's get into our first topic of the show. So Michael, what is your topic of the show?
Sure. My topic today is world building in video games. I would like to discuss with you, for us personally, what makes these worlds memorable to us. Growing up, I've played dozens of games, and I have this strong feeling of nostalgia whenever I think of different periods of time from my childhood, from my teens, and yeah, the and I would like to analyze with you what exactly these games that remain memorable to us are being composed of. Is it the environment? Is it the sound design? Is it the story, the characters? What exactly is being stamped into our brain that makes them so memorable? Because I was led to believe that maybe it's the amount of time I get to spend in a game. As a kid, I had plenty of time to just roam around one single game and actually learn the map, for instance, as the back of my hand. But I can now, as I'm in my 20s, I'm looking at two franchises that I've spent a lot of time in, and these are the GTA games and the Assassin's Creed games. And I can make a comparison that the Assassin's Creed games aren't really memorable to me. For some reason, I have bigger recollection of the GTA worlds. Because with GTA worlds, for instance, they've always left a mark on me through the radio stations available in them. So from this perspective, the sound, the sound and the music selected for that specific for those specific games was really well chosen. When I say sound, it also helped. I'm talking about the sound maps, the sound design for the game, like the NPCs talking, and what exactly becomes impactful at a certain point. So yeah, what do you think it is for you?
Brian, do you want to take this one first?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So when I sort of started thinking about this topic, I happened to mention this earlier in the show. One thing that Ubisoft always does well to me is make video game worlds that have a feel to them. And when I say feel, I mean, as a person who has come from the Chicagoland area playing Watch Dogs and driving around, going from downtown to the different neighborhoods that are in the game world, and you step out and you can feel like these are Chicago neighborhoods. They may not be building for building exact replicas of those neighborhoods, but they feel like Chicago neighborhoods. Like, I'm home. Honestly, when I go into a different place, I'd say I know what this is like. This is Lincoln Park, Wicker Park, Wrigleyville, wherever. Those places, I feel like that I'm home. And I feel the same way about the Assassin's Creed games. I know you aren't 100% on board with them, but being able to go into Syndicate and walking through London in like a Victorian London where you feel the grime on the buildings.
Yeah.
You feel you have that feeling as you're walking through
the
crowds,
smokestacks just billowing smoke into the air. Like it looks dirty. Like
right,
you're passing by like kids with like no shoes on, like sweeping a dirty factory floor, and those types of things, right?
And I know a ton of people knock Unity, and there were a lot of things that were wrong with that game, but the feeling of being in Paris during the revolution, that it is like you could feel the unrest from, like you said, the sound design and like the people, the tittering of the crowds as you sort of move through them. Those feelings are things you just can't that you can't describe in necessarily in direct words. To me, there's an indirect sort of feeling, and that's what makes them memorable for me. And I feel like Ubisoft really does a good job of making that connection with you in those worlds. Now, there's a lot of things that they could work on, but they nail the world. So to me, those are the ones that are really the memorable things.
Yeah, looking at it, I'm also thinking of maybe a geographical standpoint, because maybe the way for instance, the Ubisoft games in general are designed in such a way that, maybe the side quests and the main quests are helping you explore the map, but you for these missions, you don't really revisit places. You just for the most part, you just visit one place once. Whereas in GTA games, for instance, by the end of the game, you actually learn every single turn, or most of the turns. Like, you don't need the map anymore. You could just you could just guide yourself based on what you remember. So I was wondering if whether besides the way the missions, the activities in these worlds, um, if there's anything else that can create this feeling of.
Evan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. This will come to no surprise, and I'll apologize to McWomble in advance. But the Yakuza series, I think about a game that you revisit the exact same couple square blocks of a district in Tokyo every single game. And for some reason, instead of it feeling old and boring, it feels like you're coming back home to your old stomping grounds. I think in most games, if you return, think of a series that there's like 6 games deep, and it's the exact same map essentially. I mean, people would be like, "You got to be kidding me! Like, I've been here already 5 times, and here we are again." But Kamurocho in Yakuza is just, it feels like home. It's like, yep, I remember. Yep, this building exactly where it is. Like 2 games into that series, like, you don't need to look at the map anymore. You know where everything is. It's like, okay, there's 2 Sega game centers. There's one here. There's one here. The batting center is in the north part of the map. The old park where the homeless people live is in the top northeast. The pawn shop is in the lower, is in an alleyway that runs east-west in the south. Like, you know where all these little things are. And some of that stuff changes because the series takes place over 20 plus years. But it really feels like a district of Japan too. It's just the small little things that it does, and of course it's going to, like, similarly with the GTA series. Like, they do their homework. They visited these places, and they really wanted to capture the feel, so they're copying certain landmarks, like texture by texture, and certain blocks and very specific things, like you said, Brian, that make it feel like Chicago, even though it's not necessarily like Chicago. And I think that Kamurocho, which is modeled after Kabukicho, which is an actual district in Tokyo, it does that exact same thing. And one reason why it doesn't feel boring is because of all the things that you can do in the game. You can kind of follow the story if you want. You can beeline the story, but there's so, like, the side quests are almost like the main meat and potatoes of this game, because you'll be walking through an alley and you'll run into someone with a problem, and then a dominatrix, she's worried about, she's having the confidence to be a good dominatrix. So you help her out and teach her how to be a good dominatrix, or or in Yakuza 6, you're walking on the street and you see a Roomba just go past you. And you're like, okay. And then you see a guy come up to you. He's like, hey, have you seen a Roomba around here? You're like, as a matter of fact, I have. He's like, I was about to propose to my girlfriend, and it went on the fritz, and it sucked up the engagement ring. So you end up helping this guy chase down this Roomba. And then, of course, every side quest in Yakuza, it ends in you beating up a bunch of people, and then everyone kind of learns something about themselves and about the world. And then the camera pans up, and it says side story finished. So there's all these little things within the world of Yakuza, the people and the side story and the stories that populate Kamurocho, that make it feel alive and make it feel memorable. And maybe that's one reason why it doesn't feel boring, because all the side stories and the characters that inhabit it change, even though Kamurocho stays the same. So maybe that's one reason why it's so memorable to me, and it doesn't feel boring every time I go back to it.
One thing I could add quickly is that also another reason why, again, from a geographical point of view, the Ubisoft games and most of the open world games aren't as memorable as, for instance, GTA games, is that we need to take into account that GTA games don't have fast travel points.
You know what? Yeah, that's
the thing. That's the thing, because you are being forced to drive around. Yeah, you're being you can take the cab, but you don't want that because you have like it's not fast enough. You have to wait for the cab to come, and you need to skip the like it's you don't want to because it drags. Because you can do that in Yakuza as well. You can take the cab, but no, you'd rather just run or, but yeah, that's thinking of it right now. That's probably the main reason why games like GTA without fast traveling points are memorable and stick with you is because you are being forced to drive around that world over and over and over again. Whereas with Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Witcher, Horizon Zero Dawn,
you can wait to fast travel in those games
faster.
Because actually, quickly going back to Yakuza, maybe that's one reason why Kaburocho just seems like such. It's a world that I felt like I explored everything. Well, for one, the map is very small, so you kind of have to, and two, the map is small enough that even though you can take taxis that kind of are on the kind of the fringe outside area of every map, even though they're there, you can kind of take a taxi to different sections of the map. The map's small enough to where most of the time you're like, I'm just gonna walk there or run there, and probably in between A and B, I'm probably gonna run into a side story or someone, or get into a fight, and when I beat these guys up, I'm going to get money and experience, which are things that I need in the game. So there are things that fill that space in between A and B to where it's actually in your best interest not to take a taxi or not to fast travel. So that was a great point that you brought up. I think, that does definitely have something to do with why I like the Yakuza series in that way.
Yeah, I would like to say straight out that Evan, you have convinced me that I need.
Oh man, I really hope you like it.
Same here.
I really hope you like it now, though.
Same here.
I mean, I'll hate you forever, and we'll never be friends again if I don't. But no pressure.
I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to put all my chips in for Yakuza.
No. In all honesty, it like checks every box in my.
From what I know about you and what games that you kind of like, this Yakuza really seems like a series that I think you would get into. I think what we'll do is if you end up when you finally play, once it drops below $60 for sure, do not buy it for full price. Once you finally play Zero. Let me know and we'll get you back on the show and we'll have like a 2-hour teardown of this of your initial impressions of it. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fabulous. Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome.
Is Zero on PS4, right?
Yep, it's on PS4. It was a PS3, PS4 game, so it's got its rough edges, but I'm willing to excuse most things.
I'm also willing to pick it up. Because I've been hearing tons of things about Yakuza, and then I was like, okay, let me watch some gameplay, and it's right my alley, up my alley. Like it kind of looks like the game I would enjoy playing.
And once you run into like a couple side stories in that game, you're just running through an alley, and then something happens, and you have to like help someone with their problems. Once you do like 2 or 3 of those, then you're going to be like, okay, now I know what Evan was talking about with these kind of wacky side stories. And it's some.
Oh, I love those sort of things.
Yeah,
it just makes no sense at all. And you're just like, yep, I'm doing this.
And it's like they're in every game. And then even in Yakuza 6, it's like, how are you coming up with all these crazy ass stories? Like there's like 50 side stories in every game. And yet by 6, they still haven't run out of like weird situations that Kiryu ends up just kind of like running into. He's kind of an
there's like a board somewhere in Sega of Japan where it's just ideas just written down on the thing of like crazy things that happen to them on the train or whatever.
Yeah,
and they're just like, what if someone needed you to do X? And they're like, put it on the board. Just put it on the board.
And then they kind of go from there, right? Yeah, there's one with a YouTuber too. He comes to Tokyo to try to run into a Yakuza so he can get like a cool video, and then he actually meets a Yakuza and he gets in trouble and you have to help him out. There's some pretty good stuff in there. Right. Okay, so one thing kind of wrapping this up. Have either of you guys played Breath of the Wild, Brian?
Yes, I have played 40 some hours. I've gotten through about half the shrines and half the, what do you call it, the
Divine Beasts?
Giant monsters. Yeah, the beasts. Thank you.
And
I
Michael?
just haven't beaten the game.
Yeah, I'm like 70 hours in. I beat all the shrines, and I have one giant beast left to conquer. But I had to delete because I never upgraded the storage on my Wii U because I have it on Wii U. So I had to delete it to make space for Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I feel ashamed by that because I really feel the urge to jump back in, and I'm like, maybe I get it again for the Switch, but maybe I reinstall it on Wii U, and then again it's the Wii U, so
right.
I'm kind of torn.
Yeah.
And I don't want to restart everything on Switch because it's 70 hours, and it's the memory of the game is still fresh in my mind.
Okay, so that's actually an interesting thing because I played about 130 hours on the Wii U, and this was months and months ago. And then I played through the DLC, and then I just, for some reason, I rebought it on the Switch. And
nice. You're that guy.
I'm that guy, yeah. I bought it used on the Switch because I bought it full price on the Wii U. But I did all the shrines, 120 shrines. I like upgraded my armor. I had like the best weapon. I was like a beast in that game by the end of it. And I had played it for so long, I forgot how it felt, how weak and helpless you were in the beginning of that game because I just because I had played it for so long, it was just like, yep, fast travel here, do this, kill these guys, throw a bomb here. It took away 3 hearts. I have like 50 meals that I prepared, and I have like 18 hearts. It's not a big deal. And so when I bought it on the Switch, and I'm playing it, and I get off the Great Plateau, I'm like, oh, that's right, I can't fast travel anywhere. And I'm looking in the distance, and I'm like, I actually have to go there? Oh, I can't warp. And then like I accidentally got into a fight, and I died because I have like a tattered shirt and 3 hearts and like a stick. And I was like, that's right. This is what this game was. Like, if I see something, I have to go there. And it's like an adventure just to get there. And it could take 25 minutes. Yeah. And it's like, all of a sudden, for some reason, because I had been playing, I had just been like way too strong to remember any of this stuff back on the Wii U. It's like, that's why I like this game. And this is what you were referring to, Michael, about fast travel stuff. It's like, I had 120 shrines that I could fast travel anywhere on the map to. I didn't have to go on foot anymore. But when I replayed the game, it's like I actually had to go there, and it just like it recaptured the experience that made that game so special when I first started playing it. And
but there's something about that game where you are looking at the map and you're just like, that's a weird little jut right there in the world. Why is that there? You know what? Plunk, and you put a thing down, you see the laser beam go up into the sky, and you're like, yep, I'm going there.
Yeah. And
you go there and you find something cool, and you're like, oh, this is great.
And there's always something.
Right.
There's always something.
Especially when you're really weak and you have to be careful. So sometimes you'll see some enemies in front of you. So when you have 15 hearts and like great armor and weapons, you'll just go through them and take them out and just keep on your way. But when you're weak, you have to like go around them sometimes. It's not worth your time to deal with them because you might die. So actually getting to that point that you marked on the map takes longer. And then you might run into a mountain. And I had totally forgotten about this because I had like max stamina on the Wii U. It's like, I can't climb that.
Oh, yeah. You have.
So I have to figure out another way to get around this. So I'm wedged in between a rock and a hard place. And so it's like,
it's fantastic.
Sneaking. And it was like, I totally forgot how that felt. So I'm actually like happy that I rebought it on the Switch because it recaptured all my feelings about that game. And it kind of reiterated why that game was so special to me. And definitely like no fast travel points. It's a big deal because it forces you to go there yourself.
Yeah, the most fascinating thing about Breath of the Wild, and I'm sure there are other games as well that do this, is how they anticipate the game design actually anticipates where you might go first to where you might go to explore first or next or in which order, and there's like the item placement is put in such a way that there's almost always something that's higher. I don't think it's.
Did you read that article when the devs were explaining how
I
they
read
did
an
it?
article
It's
where
super interesting.
they were explaining this pyramidal game design method,
Right.
that there are tons of hills, and it so makes you always curious to explore further down, further the hill. You know, um, yeah. As a side point, traversal and fast traveling in games is something I really appreciate. Like, or if you don't give me fast traveling points, give me tons of ways for traversal. The paraglider in Breath of the Wild is really useful.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, I'm bringing up quickly Jasko's Free with the wingsuit and the way you could pull yourself with that hook on the ground and gain speed. You know,
right? Yeah, make it fun at least to go
make it
to
fun
go
and
from
fast.
point A to B. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I will say about Horizon Zero Dawn is I ended up using fast travel a lot because while the world was absolutely beautiful, there just wasn't really a lot in between point A and B. I mean, once you got strong enough to where like leveling up wasn't an issue, you're just kind of just running through these lush environments, but there's nothing there to explore. Because most of the stuff there's an icon on the map showing you where the special items are. So you know in between where you are now and the special item, there's nothing for you to find. Right? So there's nothing for you to run into and expect other than other than the beasts to destroy, which is, it's the main part of the game, so I understand that, but there's no sense of surprise or discovery in that way.
In the beginning, it's...
Do you guys...
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to ask... you can go ahead and talk about Horizon, because I was going to ask a completely separate question.
Yeah, just a quick thing. In the beginning, it's useful to actually explore, because you're always encountering machines, and you can rip them from their parts, and there's always something useful. But I've had problems with the inventory. Although I maxed up pretty much everything, I've always run out of inventory, and that was a problem for me. So yeah, that's what triggered the need of fast traveling, because I never had any more room in my inventory anyways.
That was a constant issue for me as well.
I tried to acquire that skill where you can call a mount, that would make things faster.
Right.
But yeah, and another thing I found quite not really challenging, but it wasn't always. I didn't always have the possibility to fast travel, because it consumes resources. So you have to have meat in order to make those bags to fast travel.
I guess at least there's that. I mean, they tried to they tried to make you conserve that stuff.
They try to mitigate that, because otherwise you wouldn't explore the world at all.
But then you can just buy them from the merchants. So it's like, what's the point?
They still ask you for meat.
Right.
They still ask you for meat. So so you kind of have to manage the way you're going to travel around the world.
I suppose,
which is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose there is that. All right. Yeah. All right. And then I guess wrapping it up.
I feel like we'd be remiss. I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't mention at least some Bethesda games. Just because, I mean, I think the Fallout universe and the Elder Scrolls universe both have, and maybe they're not, the most detailed worlds. Of course, the Fallout universe obviously that's purposeful, but I think there is something to walking around and riding around those universes and they have their own style that it makes them memorable.
Yeah, and I think actually one thing that reminds me of the Yakuza series in Fallout and that game is you could just be traveling the world and you'll just run into an NPC that like gives you some sort of side quest, and then all of a sudden, instead of going to the town, all of a sudden you're going off to the left and like doing the side quest for someone, and then like 10 hours later, it's like, where was I going? Oh, that's right, I'm supposed to go to the town. So there is that element of the game where it does feel kind of lived in, where anything's possible because you took a detour and that you didn't expect because some random NPC kind of, just it popped up on your map or something like that. So that type of stuff does help. That's pretty cool. All right, we should probably move on. That was a good discussion. It's there's a lot of good examples there of what make open worlds or just video game worlds memorable. A lot of good stuff in there. All right, thanks for that, Michael. Moving on to topic 2. So Bentley, Brian, what is your topic of the show?
Sure. My topic is about what do we or the industry as a whole, or I'm not really sure. I'm using this royal we can do to make eSports more inclusionary for everyone to understand and enjoy. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. I happened to just in the last week or so pick up a little bit and watched some Overwatch League.
Okay.
Right. And here now, mind you, here's a game and a company that is putting real emphasis on presentation, right? They have casters who are calling the action. They have analysts in between. They have interviews with people, and that's great. Except when they're playing, they sometimes focus on let's just pick one character, say Tracer. So then now for those of you who don't know, Tracer is an assault character. She's DPS. She blinks, right? So she has this ability to jump forward a certain amount of distance or backwards, like poof, and then she pops somewhere else. And she also has the ability to rewind time. Now, to a person who plays Overwatch, that's sensical, that's Tracer. Okay, great. And to a person who has never seen it before, and let's just pretend, I realize this is on Twitch and I'm there's some hypotheticals involved here, but say they turned it on and all of a sudden they just see a massive energy blasts all over the screen, and then here's a person that's blinking in and out of existence all over the place. Finally, there's that, and then all of a sudden she rewinds time, and there's no explanation as to how this exists or what is happening on the screen. And then the announcers are talking about like, well, it's clear here that Boston's using a dive, a dive strategy, blah, 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 blah. And
I love you.
And they're pulling out a Valkyrie and blah, blah, and I'm just and I'm like, and I'm literally going, I have no idea what a dive strategy is. And I know video games. I know this game. I've put dozens of hours into this game, and I have no bleeping, I have no fucking idea what the hell they're talking about. And so I'm like texting my friend who's watched a lot more Overwatch League. I'm like, what is a dive strategy? And so he's explaining it to me, and I'm like, oh, well, why don't they just explain that? Because, I mean, if you really think about a football, if you're watching American football, they will actually sit there and be like, okay, well, in this situation, do you think they're going to go with this or this? Are they going to go for the long pass, or are they going to go for a short yardage situation? And they actually explain possibilities of things that are happening, as opposed to just talking over my head. And you're like, wow, if anyone else was watching this, they would be like, don't know what's happening. None of this makes sense. Click. So if we want to make this exclusionary, like inclusionary, so that people who aren't players of Overwatch actually want to watch this and make it as something that they want to view, how are we going to do that?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because I think to some extent you have to be interested or a fan of the genre of game that is being played. For example, I don't like MOBAs, and I'm not interested in watching people compete competitively, even in video games themselves. Like I watch people play single player games in Twitch sometimes, especially older games.
Sure. But
I am not interested in watching people play video games competitively. And not only that, if you want to add, a genre of game that I'm not interested in on top of that, that being MOBAs, then that's a really, really hard sell for me. And then on top of that, you have them using language that is just the what do they call it?
Completely foreign.
Completely foreign. It's the barrier of entry, I think, is way more than even like a regular sport. And I think it's just because, like, think about sports in general. Even if you don't watch sports, we all grew up, with physical education. Like, we played wiffle ball, we played kickball, we played sports in gym class. And some people went on to, play football or play soccer for their school or to go onto a club team. So, everyone has had experience with playing sports, traditional sports like volleyball or whatever, whether that be gym class or a club team or anything like that. So it's easy for us to wrap our head around the idea of competing in a more traditional sport. And then on top of that, you get people that have been huge sports fans, whether that's, football, soccer, or, any of the big major sports, hockey, baseball, that type of thing, since they were kids, whether that be, through their parents or whatever. So I just think it's more through like pop cultural osmosis. It's just something that we can wrap our heads around because we've been around traditional sports way more than we have with video games. So I think the barrier of entry with sports is just it's easier because we've been around it for so long. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that, but I think there are certain games that could lend themselves, and I put in as an example, Rocket League. You can say, okay, people are cars hit ball into net.
Yeah, there's more parallels with traditional sports in Rocket League. So it's easier to you watch that game for like 10 seconds and you kind of get what it's about, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that part's great. Or honestly, I feel like Counter-Strike Go, a CSGO, you can actually say to someone, okay, you understand about army men, and they do a nice job of making sure that, you as the viewer can see people behind buildings and stuff. And then you go like, okay, that person's going to come out. Oh, we shot him in the head. Oh, I get that.
Or like
that's something I can understand.
Like they're on a map, 5 people on one team, 5 people on the other. Whichever team kills the other 5 wins or whatever like that. Like you can kind of wrap your head around that. But
I still feel like there's a way that we can make it more exclusionary. That if the viewer who don't know anything, did I say exclusionary? I apologize. Yeah, I meant inclusionary. That where the presentation could make it more sensical for the viewer, even though there are 20 heroes in Overwatch. I still feel like there's a way for them to do it to make it easier.
Okay, well. Michael, do you play MOBAs or do you watch any eSports?
The only eSports, so to speak, that I play is Rocket League. I tried MOBAs. I don't like them. But trying to find an answer for this matter, I'm going to add on what Evan was saying, that it's common knowledge, like when we're speaking about the traditional sports, most of us grow up with them because they are being part of our school education. They are being part of our education. We are being brought up with those, and we see them everywhere. But I would also look beyond this aspect. Sports have been a trait of humanity, of a trait of our species, like from ancient times. They've been physical sports. They've been here for such a long period of time compared to video games. My professor at university has this beautiful analogy when he speaks about the video game industry. He compares it to the movie industry, and he says that currently it's been only 30 years, and we are yet to get out of the black and white mute genre of movies, so to speak. We are still in this category. So I think for most people, when they look at games, they feel like it's, yeah, okay, I would have to make some time for me to play some game. Most people see games as a waste of time, and or maybe not a waste of time. You see, we are used to playing games, and we can make a time frame. Like for us, for us, 1 hour of playing a game might mean like a lot more time to another person who doesn't usually play games. Let's say we play games, but we don't, for instance, read books all that often. So for us, reading 1 hour of a book, that's a lot. We don't have a grasp of a clear grasp of how long that would take, you know, how much we can achieve in that specific hour. So once we get across this concept of gaming towards the audience that doesn't play games, then that will make it more accessible to people to actually follow what's going on. Because if you compare physical sports that are being put on TV, for instance, and you compare them to esports, the audience for esports is people that also really play these games, and football, for instance, soccer. People that watch soccer games can either play soccer themselves, or you have people that never played soccer.
That's a good point.
So yeah, you have both parts. And as you, Brian, was saying, a first step, or one of the first steps, is actually getting these the rules of these games made clear to that new audience. Because yeah, that's the first key. Like once you make out what's happening in that game, you can actually kind of start to follow and enjoy it. So yeah, that could be a first step. But in order for that to happen, you need to actually grab the attention of the people and actually find interest in watching video games first, and then watching esports.
Right, because the only way you're going to find out about the rules of the game is like to actively seek that information out. To whereas more traditional sports, you might just kind of learn the general rules of like the NFL or soccer, just through whatever, through someone else, or through growing up watching sport or listening to sport, or just seeing it on TV, that type of thing. But like to know about a video game, especially some more complex things that happen in a game like Overwatch, like you were talking about, what was it called? Like you had played the game for dozens of hours, Brian, and you had no idea like this rule, a dive strategy. Yeah. So it's like, unless, like Michael was saying, unless either first you get their foot in the door by having them watch any video game, even when you do that, like they have to kind of actively seek out that information if they want to learn those specific intricacies of esports games like Overwatch. Whereas like Rocket League is to hit the ball into the net,
Yeah, and besides this, it's about that, because we're talking about this matter being inclusive. Let's say I don't play games. I don't know what games really are. Like, I know they are a form of entertainment, but I've never held a controller in my hands. I've never played games. I don't do that. And I'm being introduced to Rocket League, and I'm being introduced to this esports scene. I might feel discouraged at first to pursue in following Rocket League matches or so, because on my side, I don't know anyone else in my social circle that also does things like this. So we as gamers, we are already part of a community, of a well-defined community. We can relate to people around the whole globe when we're like, yeah, I am starting watching esports, like I'm starting watching MOBAs, championships, yeah. And I know that, like me, there's a lot of other people on Twitch. You bring I don't know, maybe you bring your father or your grandfather, someone in your family, yeah, they have no one to relate to on this aspect, so they are like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but I don't expect someone from a previous generation to actually sit down, or even our generation, but I doubt anyone, like there might be people from our group age that have no inclination into playing games or so. Yeah, if
Right.
their social circle, if they don't have anyone to relate to, they won't stick to it. So
I mean, look at me. I play video games every day, and I'm not interested in it. So, what chance do a lot of other people have,
yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
that's another thing. That's another thing. Yeah, yeah. Or there are non-gamers that are not interested in sports.
Right.
In physical sports, they don't watch football. So yeah, that's
See, I'm on the other
thing.
end of that. Like,
Yeah.
I do not consider people playing video games a sport in any sense of the word. I know a lot of people think like, okay, so let's sit down and define a sport. I don't know if we want to crack this nut open right now, but I am in the circle of like, no, do not, no esports in the Olympics. Like, it's not a sport. People competitively playing gaming is not a sport. You guys can totally disagree with me, but I separate video games from like traditional sports. Like, I'm more of my mindset of what a sport is more traditional, and that's an older way of thinking. Maybe that's one issue I have with not being interested in watching competitive gaming, but but that is part of the problem of pulling people into something that's new like this, that a lot of people do consider a sport, and they pay tickets and they sit in a stadium and they watch their favorite players compete with these things. And for me, that's just something that I cannot get past personally. But
Yeah,
to each their own.
I definitely agree with you on the fact that esports are not really sports. It's more of a matter that I do agree with the fact that skilled people in these games, I think it's a really good thing that there are events that celebrate them, and they are being shown to the public or other fans of those.
Yeah, have your fun, make your money.
This is
Yep.
what. Yeah. This is what a skilled player in this particular game can do, and you can be amazed and wowed. But calling it an esport,
I think we're kind of screwed. The name has been slapped on. I don't think we can change it anymore. Like, I don't know what we would change it to.
Too fast, too quick. It wasn't thought thoroughly. They rushed to make this decision, but who knows, maybe in the next 30, 40, 50 years new hardware will be introduced that will change everything, or even sooner. I don't know, and it will make these games feel more like sports. Maybe you'll be able to introduce a physical counterpart in these activities, but again, we're still in an early state of when we're looking at gaming. There are many things that
and obviously moving forward, like when you're talking about generations, because we're in the earliest states, like this stuff could change as more generations are exposed to technology earlier, and probably games. Like, think about my first video game. What was I, 4 or 5? Like, some kids, like, they've played video games on their iPad since they were like 2 years old. So that is the perception of video games is going to change for the better, and it's become more normalized as the generations move on, to where we're kind of like the one generation that's kind of like, well, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, maybe. But I think as it progresses, like you said, it's early days when you think about how old the video game industry is. So yeah, I think this moving forward, I think the perception is going to change. And once that changes, then it's going to get easier for people to get their foot in the door and possibly be interested in esports. Cool. Moving on to the end of the show. Sorry about that. Brian had to go tend to his daughter. It's actually pretty late where he is. So, happens from time to time. It's actually happened before on the podcast. So, Brian, we appreciate you staying on as long as you did. And thanks for bringing up the topic. It was actually a really interesting conversation. Something that I initially didn't think I'd have a lot to say about, but I think we did a good job discussing like what where esports can go from here in the future, and what it is now. So moving on to the end of the show, podcastreload@gmail.com, at podcast_reload on Twitter. You can find me at thestanduser on SIFTD.net, Giant Bomb on Twitter, Film Star Revenge on PSN, that's 1R. And Brian, you can catch him at Quiglin on Twitter, Quiglin, at Bentley on SIFTD, and Quiglin on PSN, Xbox, and Twitch. And Michael, how about yourself? Where can people find you?
People can find me at AW08 on SIFTD, and my Twitter handle is MR08_art, ART. Quite a complicated handle, but yeah.
Well, it's better than mine. It's better than my name. Most names are.
Yeah, it's the first two initials of my name and the year I started picking up drawing as a hobby. So.
Oh, cool. Now you'll never forget. All right, so if you want to join us on the show, you can reach us at one of those places that I mentioned above, podcast@gmail.com, podcast_reload, or thestanduser on SIFTD, Giant Bomb, or Twitter. And just like our guests did, and we'll work out a time to get you on the show. Pretty flexible. Might take a couple emails back and forth, but we will get you on the show one way or another, hopefully at a time of your most convenience. So again, Brian, I know you had to go, but thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And Michael, first time on, I think you did a great job, and thanks for getting on the show. I'm always glad to have new people on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm
really
coming back. Just for a second. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No. I was just expressing my happiness of being part of this podcast for the first time, and of course, I'm looking forward to be part of it again in the near future.
Oh, awesome! All right, you're on the list. And Brian, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to do my plugs real quick. You can find me on Twitter and Twitch as Quiglin. It's Quiglin. I've been Twitch streaming every day at 2 p.m. Eastern. Well, now it'll be Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So join me and give me a follow there. That would be great. I'd really appreciate it. That would be awesome. Thanks, everybody.
All right. That's going to do it for us here at Podcast Reload, episode 54. Everyone, have a good weekend and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.